to Leah Goldring. Leah is a new gym owner of a gym called Collective Strength, along with two other women who are running this gym with the goal of making it a very diverse atmosphere, creating a space for all lifters, no matter what their background is. Along with that, we talked about her most recent competition at Raw Nationals 2021, how she's dealing with some injuries that had her battling to even show up on the day of competition, but how she plans to have a full recovery and to come back strong for the Arnolds in 2022. It was a great chat, so make sure you subscribe to my channel, click the alert button so you can know when I drop a new episode, and make sure you share with a friend. Without further ado, let's get started. But yeah, when I saw like your story, I was like, okay, it looks like traveling is different and new for her. Cause like you own a gym. So I was like,
well, that's also different and new for me.
ooh.
Okay. So I started the old new job, I think the last week of February 2020. We went into COVID shutdown after I had been in the office for a week and a half. So I now have a job that's a sales position, a client-facing position in commercial interior product. And like all of the shit that goes into the spaces, we can no longer occupy. I've gotten no training for it. This is supposed to be a job where I'm heavily on the road, whatever. And I'm stuck in front of my computer on Zoom meetings from like 8 o'clock in the morning till sometimes 8, 9 o'clock at night. And it was like, yeah, this is super, super fun. Yeah, so that was great. So I managed to make that exactly a year. They laid me off on my 1-year anniversary. Now in the don't get me started.
Okay. I will not get you started.
You know what, and honestly, I have, you know, that company culture had left a lot to be desired, and had I known what it was like, I probably wouldn't have, regardless of COVID circumstances, made the move I made. But you live and you learn. So at some point, November-ish of 2020, two friends and I start talking, October, November-ish, about how COVID has made us realize how shitty some of the gym owners in our area are. And like gym access within like Philadelphia area, like not outside of the city, not in the suburbs, like actually in Philadelphia, was never great anyway. And, you know, just some of the ways that they responded, we just really were like, oh, well, this sucks. We kind of don't want to give these mediocre white guys our money, but what are our other options? And we like joked around about it would be cool if we could open our own space, blah, blah, blah. And again, my background is commercial real estate. So I got some information together and I started looking at it. And I was like, you know what, we actually can do this. So the space started out after gyms, like they briefly reopened, then COVID cases ticked up and they closed down again. It started out as a very, very small, like almost a basement closet space that one person could work out in at a time. And we did it as a timeshare. And at that point, I kind of like didn't use it much because I still had my basement gym, whereas my friends didn't. So we used it like kind of as a timeshare where we would all like book time slots that we were going to be in there to work out. And we started collecting equipment. We gained enough interest that we decided that we could open it as a small training space. So we went ahead so that was December, we opened the tiny closet gym. And literally we got the equipment in there. And 2 days later, I was heading down to Virginia for a meet in Virginia. We signed the lease to move into the larger space and started getting ready to do that right as I was getting laid off from my job. So like, I'm like, oh, okay, oh shit. And in the meantime, by the way, like we have found out between December, where I competed as a 52 very easily, like just weighed in way under, didn't cut, anything like that, did pretty well. We found out that they were moving up nationals to June. And if I wanted to compete as a 47, I was going to have to do a meet between at that point, I guess like the middle of January and June. So we picked a meet in March, and it was like, okay, great. Now I have to cut down to a 47. So I'm cutting down to a 47. I've just signed a lease on a new gym space. We're working through all the build out and the planning for that new gym space, getting that off the ground. Got laid off the last week of February. We got the keys for the space on March 15th. I did my first meet as a 47 on March 20th. Got in a car the next morning, came home and went like, got home, showered, dropped off my stuff, and went straight out the door to the gym to start working on building out the gym space. We opened the gym space April 1st, and I started my new job April 26th.
Wow. So you were like really free and like not busy at all for the past year.
Oh yeah. No, it's been great. Everything's gone super according to plan. This is exactly where I thought I'd be and what I'd be doing, and exactly the workload I expected to have. I'm managing it super well. My stress levels are amazing. My communication skills are great. I'm super focused. I'm not constantly on edge and like trying to find ways to like not lose all my friends in the process of like trying to figure out what the new balance is and how not to tear my hair out, basically.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But real talk, like you had an incredibly busy 2020 into now. Like the new job that you're doing currently, along with owning a gym, because remember, I did not record the very, very beginning. Can you tell us what it is?
So the new job right now, I still am in commercial interiors, which is basically everything that you put into a commercial business, a commercial space. So you're talking the furniture. We don't represent a wall line, so I don't deal with walls here. And it's, you know, furniture, whiteboards, artwork, acoustics, anything like that. So we represent a couple of small boutique lines. And these spaces can be office spaces, hospitality spaces, so restaurant, hotel, stuff of that sort, and basically bring their products to market. And my job with that is coordinating with all of the A&D community, the interiors community, that the dealership side of things, a little bit with the commercial brokerage community, which is where I come from. That's my background. And it's, you know, it's a sales job. So I'm basically making sure that everybody has the information on the product. I'm going out on site to see what people might need and make recommendations, and then work to get that, you know, in their hands the correct way, following the deal process, all of that good stuff. So it's traveling around the tri-state area, doing a lot of site visits for that. And traveling around. The travel that you've been seeing a little bit more of too is going out to the different manufacturers and learning more about what they have going on. So the last couple of days, I actually just thought it was pretty cool. I posted a lot of stuff from JSI, which was in Jasper, Indiana, mostly, or all over Indiana, but I was mostly in Jasper. And they do a lot of like high-end, high quality furniture. A lot of it's wood-based, a lot of it's very craftsman heavy. I just learned how they bend the wood for chairs, which was really, really cool.
I did see that.
Yeah, I was like, wow, I didn't know this, and this is actually kind of interesting. But I spent 3 days touring around all of their manufacturing and meeting the whole team and the marketing team and stuff out there. So that was what that was. And then
I was gonna say, I suppose, are you happier to at least be traveling? Because you went from, you know, I'm supposed to be doing this travel job, I'm gonna sit in front of Zoom for hours and hours instead. So is it better to travel for you, or is it kind of easier in a way to be at home?
This is a complicated question. I'm a very, very social person. And suddenly, because the other thing that happened at the end of 2019 was I ended a 4-year-long relationship. So I had just gotten back into my own house, like kind of doing my own thing and kind of getting settled in, and like looking at starting to make the repairs on my house that I had put off while I was in this relationship, because I didn't know what I was going to be doing with my house. Am I going to be renting it out? Am I going to be selling it? whatever. What I didn't really think I was going to be doing was going to be moving back into it, but it was just the best decision for me. So I got out of a 4-year long relationship where I'd been racing back and forth between checking on stuff with my house, being at his house. We had his kids 40% of the time. So, doing all of that stuff and whatever, to suddenly being home alone with no human contact 100% of the time. As a very, very social person who has a very, very social job. It was brutal. It was damn near impossible to do my job that way. I relied very, very heavily on Zoom, not just for work purposes, which was like by the end of it, because the Zoom meetings, like the crush of Zoom meetings from 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever, till you have like all of your happy hours and all of your networking events and whatnot have now moved to Zoom things after hours. And everybody feels like they need to have more and more because they're trying to, like, nobody knows what to do. We're all in this same boat of nobody knows what to do, and everybody was overcompensating. I was relying on Zoom for, like, I ran a Zoom lifting group of like women who got together on pretty much every Saturday. Anybody who could sign on and wanted to sign on got on this lifting Zoom group, and we all just like talked and laughed with each other while we did our separate lifting programs. So it was like, that was the entirety of my social life. And it was brutal in a lot of ways, like going weeks on end without so much as a hug. My little sister had a baby. I was supposed to be her support while she was there having the baby. Instead, I didn't even get to like hold my nephew for months. It was brutal, but there were some ways where it was easier, in the sense of like, I had my gym that I managed to build out in the basement. So, what else am I going to do? All I did was, other than the days I ordered takeout, all I did was like make food at home, eat food at home, go downstairs, work out, work, lather, rinse, repeat. And there was like very, very little variation. I mean, I woke up every morning being like, I don't know how I'm still managing to get through this. This is the worst thing ever. But it was all very contained and easy at the same time. I like this a lot more. This is a lot more feeling like me. However, it was like 0 to 100. It was like nothing's open and now everything's open, and just like have at it. And it's like, have at it with all of these other things that I didn't expect to be having going on at the same time. And so like the stress level has been pretty high. And I don't know if I actually answered the question, but like, I like this better, but I kind of wish that this had like eased in a little bit more than like, we're doing everything at once right now. All of a sudden, have fun with it. I am at the very least glad that, if I'm going to look at a positive from everything immediately leading up to nationals, it's that I have a nice long off season right now. So I have time to kind of learn and adjust, I hope.
Yeah, well, let's hope nothing else crazy
Yeah,
comes
please,
in the middle, right?
Please, let's leave it at this.
Yes. So your gym Collective Strength.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, you're talking about how it basically came together like throughout this craziness of times, and then like you started, like the gym started, and then you started the other job. And so my question is, how did you even get like hype for the gym when like you came up with the idea when like stuff was still shut down?
So not only did we come up with the idea while stuff was still shut down, I knew my one partner, Kelly. Both of my partners live in Philadelphia. I knew my one partner, Kelly, because we had somehow connected with each other on Instagram. And if like, I'm a highly social person. So we connected on Instagram, and I was like, oh, I like this person. This person's great. So we started talking back and forth on Instagram and became friends. We had never met in person until after the pandemic. And the first time we met in person was actually like, we went to a Black Lives Matter march together. And so we started talking, and we started talking more and more. But again, it's still a pandemic. It's not like we can hang out in closed spaces. And she had a friend from her gym, Lydia, who was also interested in this. So we all started to get together on Zoom meetings. So I signed the first lease for Collective Strength before I ever met Lydia in person.
Wow.
So we all did this crazy thing, and there have been growing pains, and a lot of them have been my fault, or just like I don't even want to say my fault. It's, again, obviously there's like a lot of stress going on, and I also come from a very different work background and like communication experience and whatever than they do, and so it's like learning how to work with each other and communicate with each other has been a little bit, and I'm probably the one that's the hardest to learn how to work with because I'm so used to being a lone wolf in a lot of ways. So, but how do we gather a pipe for it?
Yeah.
Instagram, talking to people that we knew within the community. They had some of their friends come over from the gym that they were at. I had some friends who I knew, again, actually mostly through Instagram and Reddit, come over. We've gotten some great support from like trainers I knew in the area who signed on to partner with us on certain things and help us spread the word about this space that we had opening up. And so somehow we're not in total financial ruin. We are getting it off the ground. We have some things, and I don't want to talk too much about them because I didn't clear it with anybody. But we have some things going on that I think are going to help us get to where we really want to go as an organization. We started working with one trainer who is I had always known from Instagram and didn't realize she knew who the heck who I was. I always admired her, but a friend introduced us and she was like, apparently she follows me too. I didn't realize it and was like, oh yeah. So she does a lot of work with beginner athletes coming from a variety of different situations. She's doing a seminar series in our gym, and that's helped spread the word a lot. So we did the deadlift one in June. The bench press one is next week. I'm helping with the bench press one. And we filled up 2 sessions. The first session like sold out in like 0 time. We filled up 2 sessions. So we're hoping that by the time we get to the squat one in August, these will be like a thing and we can just get more people in the gym and using the space and grow it slowly. We'd also love to have a bigger space with better access. So first crossed that we can do that.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned, that'd be really cool. So I hope your space is bigger. One thing you mentioned was you wanted your gym to be different because you didn't like the atmosphere of the gyms around you run by people who just like weren't just like didn't vibe with you, you know, like they were all kind of the same. So like what's like the goal with your gym then? Like how are you making your gym different? Obviously, one, it's run by you and 2 other women, which is just cool. Most gyms aren't run by women. So that's amazing right there.
Right. So, I mean, our walls are not black and red or aggressively neon green and whatever. Now, that's obviously the most basic thing. Our goal is to introduce more people to strength training who have not been encouraged towards strength training or not been represented in strength training or not felt welcome in strength training spaces for whatever reason. And that could be because of their body size, because of their age, because they're an adaptive athlete, because they're a woman, because of their gender expression, because of anything about their identity that has made them feel unwelcome, threatened, like they do not have value, like they are lesser, or like they do not belong in a gym space. And these are the people who we want to bring into our gym space. We also want our gym space to be financially accessible. So we have our membership price. You can come in if you have the finances to do it. And there's a questionnaire that you can fill out to self-assess where you should be on the membership tier. There is a sustainer rate that is $90 a month. And this is saying, I can afford to be here. And I also want to help make sure somebody else can afford to be here. There's a market rate that's $75 a month, which is I can to be here and pay the full rate to be here and to access a space. There's a tier down from that, which is, you've taken this self-assessment and it's clear that, $75 a month is going to be a financial strain for you. There's a tier down from that. I think it's currently, the first tier is currently 50, I think. These have just recently changed and I'm not looking at the website, so I'd have to check. And then there's a lower tier down from that. We also have a community advisory board, which is helping us figure out how we can do this and make this sustainable. Some of these people are fitness professionals. Some of these people are advocates who work within certain communities that we want to extend access to, and we want to make sure this space is accessible to them and is comfortable to them. So they're advocates either within LGBTQ communities, within communities of people who are struggling with addiction issues, whatever the case may be. It's just anybody who's ever felt undervalued in these spaces. These are the people we want to make sure, because we don't represent all of these people. I'm a woman, sure, but I'm a cis white woman. Who am I to say what somebody else is facing? So we wanted to make sure that we had a community advisory board who we do pay for their time, who helps us figure out how we can better represent these communities. We're working on building a scholarship fund right now. The scholarship fund is one of our core values, is that we pay people what they're worth. So that includes any trainers who might be resources to us or might be resources to our community. So trainers don't make a lot of money. And part of making sure that there's better representation within strength sports means also making sure that all of the people training athletes who get all of the opportunities to train athletes. So if we want to do that, the last thing that we want to do is ask people who are representative of the people who we want to see to subsidize themselves in order to do that. That's not fair. These are already people who've been asked to subsidize themselves over and over and over again. So it's how can we get the funding together to make sure one of the athletes in our space is able to connect with a trainer who is appropriate for them and who they feel good about training with and can work with them. And that trainer, that coach gets paid their fair rate. So we're working on how we can partially fund these resources or fully fund these resources based on, a case-to-case basis. Some of the groups who do programming and stuff like that, Barbell Medicine has given us a discount code that we can use for our gym. Claire was very helpful with that. Jordan was very helpful with that. We're talking to one other group who's really interested in it. SBD is giving us equipment for lifters who can't afford equipment, and equipment to keep in the gym for lifters to try, so that people coming in who maybe aren't ready to buy equipment or don't know what sizes they need can try the equipment out, and then we can get them in touch with SBD down the line if they need stuff of their own. And there's a lot of stuff, and there's some stuff going on the organizational end on our part that allows us to do more of this. And that's like a lot of paperwork and legal crap that, again, we're learning about as we go.
My mind is blown. Like, I feel like you just expressed or like explained my dream environment. Like, seriously, like that's so different that you guys got together and said, how can we make this like with a lot of diversity and make everyone feel comfortable? And I think that's so important because, like, especially with the year and a half, or well, what are we in? July? Yeah, year and a half we just had, right?
Yeah.
It's like when it was really thrown in our faces that there's a lot of groups that are not represented properly.
Nope.
And once that was really thrown in our faces, like even I, as an African-American woman, I was like, it was even thrown in my face how I was like, oh, really? I'm really not represented properly. It's like I knew it, but I didn't know it. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, that makes total sense. And it's like, it's funny, and I don't know, like I could just be going off, like my brain does this thing where I go off on tangents. Like you have people who are like, oh, well, these underrepresented groups, things are changing. They just need to be patient. You need to be patient. It's like telling somebody who spent their entire life being marginalized and not having access to the basic things that you take for granted, that they just have to be patient while you figure out how to treat them like a human being. Like the disparities are so wide. And it's like, and I'm going to, yes, there are ways in which I have been, marginalized purely for being a woman, or, every once in a while for being Jewish, or whatever the case may be. But on the scale, I still fall under a pretty, privileged place. And it's like, so if I don't like it when I'm mistreated for the reasons that I'm mistreated, business do I have telling somebody who is far more marginalized than I am or will ever be that, oh, you just need to be patient. Things are changing. They just take time. You can't expect this to happen overnight. And I'm just like, because the fact of the matter is, that is the laziest ass thing that somebody could say. Because if the guy, and it's usually guys, it's usually people in positions of the most privilege who are saying it, wanted it to change, the power is there for them to do it right now. And I think that Kelly and Lydia and I just looked at it and we're like, we have very little power, but we have this like one small community and we have this one small place where we're sitting here and we're like, this is infuriating. And it's like, well, guess what? We can actually do something about it. Like we can't do much of anything, but this is one place where maybe we can actually do some good, or start to do some good. So let's try that. And that's kind of where we are with it. And I hope it works out well. And I hope I have lots good more news to share about things as they go forward.
Oh man, like I also hope so as well. And I'm actually curious because obviously this all came together and you guys are like, this is our goal. We're going to make this different and be very inclusive. Does everyone have like a specific role? Like my question is, they're like a businessy person, they're more of a coachy person. Like how does it blend well together that you guys work together? Three's a lot.
There is a lot, and we're working on it. And this is where I was saying that we're running into the problems, and it's probably, and I know that it's been frustrating for them, and especially, well, there's three things. There's the fact that their communication styles and their professional backgrounds and even their life backgrounds are a lot more similar to each other than they are to me, and their work styles and their work environments are, and their skill sets are a lot more overlap. Um, the other thing is, I started thinking I was taking on one level of stress, and then everything hit at once. So learning how to balance and learning how to actually communicate what my capacity is, and or even knowing day to day what my capacity is going to be. Like it's been very, very hard for me to not to like be like, these are the things I'm good at, these are the things I'm not so great at and probably shouldn't be responsible for. Or like, yeah, you know what, I shouldn't be giving you this timeline on a project, because if I run into like one bump along the road, I don't know that I'm actually going to be able to do this the way that I want to. So we are figuring out the different roles. I think at the end of the day, my experience is much more, bringing things to market. So the sales, the business developments, the getting people on board, the sponsorships, the corporate partnerships, stuff like that. I think I will probably wind up doing more on that end of things, and also some things with like special events and and expansion projects in the way of things like site selection and getting floor plans in the door and stuff like that, because this is all where my experience lies. I am terrible at accounting. I am terrible at uh, grant writing. I just turned in 3 months worth of expenses that would have taken me a half an hour to do, but I didn't spend the half an hour to do them because they just made me want to, looking at it made me want to cry. anything that's this, anything that's like the organizational, the day-to-day, the niceties, the operational side of running a business, I think it's fair to say that I should admit that this is probably not me. The stuff that it's like, these are the day-to-days, the policies and the procedures that we have to have in place. They are much, much better at. And we do have to figure out how to make that work, because that can sometimes lead to people feeling like their work isn't being valued, or sometimes it just means the work is really uneven. And you know, we want to make sure that everybody is putting in an even amount and also feeling valued. And so we're getting there as we go along. But we are looking at, like, right now, everything has been like a collaborative effort, but it's going to have to be, how can we split it off into different roles to make sure that nobody's overloaded and everybody's actually doing what they're capable of doing and good at. And so it's getting there. It's a work in progress. And I don't mean to say it like in any way that's we're at each other's throats, because we're not. You know, we're good friends and we care a lot for each other. It's just that it's a learning as we grow type thing, because nobody knows, like, as much as we try to prepare ourselves, you don't know exactly what you're getting into. And we also have like full-time jobs that we're attending to and lots of other things going on. So it's learning how this works is still very new to us. And it's been a lot of research, a lot of conversations. So we'll see. And it's a good question. And hopefully I answered it well without going off on super tangents. Yeah.
No, you answered it perfectly well, because the question was like, how do you guys split it up? And it's like, you're learning how to split it up.
We're learning how to split it up. And, you know, we're learning how to split it up, and I'm taking a crash course in learning how to communicate with people. And not that again, my entire job is communicating with people, but it's communicating with people in an entirely different way. So it's like, I didn't realize where it was like, oh, yeah, this is something that you should work on. But, and as far as the coaching goes, we are looking at doing something, and we haven't introduced it yet, that is an in-house, affordable rate, lower cost coaching. And I think it's likely that I'll take the lead on that, but we have to do some work on it before we release it, because obviously we want to be able to provide it as a service to our members, as like one of the options of ways that they can get access to training. And we want to do that, and we want to make sure that we're providing them a service, but we also want to make sure that there's enough boundaries set in place that it's not, you know, anybody taking on more than they can take on.
Yeah. Would it be online, or am I asking too many questions? Like, are you like not allowed to say it yet?
It's not that I'm not allowed to say. It's that I think we're still working through the details. We had it sort of as a hybrid for people who were coming into the gym as newbies. Like, the thought was kind of like, we could do an intro session with you, we can do a once a month check-in with you, and then everything else will be like set, you know, online stuff, and it's going to be a half an hour scheduled call every however. And so we're still working it out.
There we go. Yeah, hybrid's a great way to go too, because if you go like, it's really hard to do like full blown having an online section and then in person. I mean, I'm talking about like, I would know, I'm like, I've never owned a freaking gym, but it seems super hard to do a full online section and then in person, especially when you're still building a lot of the in-person stuff. So I think hybrid would be like semi easier to get started on, right?
Yeah, and right now we've started doing what we call office hours. So each of the owners will schedule times when they have the time, and it's nothing consistent. I did a couple last week, and I'll maybe try to do a couple this week. But it's like, I can be at the gym these 3 hours if you have questions, or you want to go over something, or you don't know how to use a piece of equipment, or there's just something you don't feel comfortable with. I'm here these 3 hours. If you want to come in and talk to me, just let me know and we'll schedule a time. And we're trying to build that out, because the other thing is, like, it's hard to remember what it's like to be like entirely new. Okay. So Not knowing that you can adjust a combo rack, for example, because you've never seen a combo rack before, nonetheless use one. Like these are things that like it might seem intuitive to you, but you know, I remember the first time, it takes me a second, but I remember the first time I tried to use a combo rack, I was like, I don't know how to fucking use this. The first 3 times I squatted with an SSB bar, I definitely had the SSB bar backwards. And I was like, why am I fighting against this so much? And it took somebody coming up and being like, hey, you know, that's backwards, right? And thankfully it was in my very friendly CrossFit gym where nobody made a big deal out of the fact that I didn't know how to use an SSB bar. But like, you know, if you're trying not to put people, if you're trying to give people access, having the equipment isn't enough. You have to empower them to use it. So, and I think that in our case, that means offering some sort of in-person instruction for people who want it.
Yeah, like that's so smart too, because I'm the same way. Like it's really hard to think back because like everyone started somewhere, but then once you're years down the road, it's like, oh yeah, like I remember I literally almost killed myself trying to figure out how to put the bench in the combo rack. I was like, where's it go? And I had it outside the combo rack, like not in the slot. And I was like an idiot. And like someone had to be like, Solana, it's not inside. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And like, and it's like, you don't want to ever put someone in a position where like they're like embarrassed, right? So like, it's really smart to be like, hey, I'm just gonna open the door and I'm here. It's a really small, friendly atmosphere. Like, just ask me. Or if you see them, I'm just gonna come out and help you out, right? Because you're making it like, you can ask questions and not feel dumb here. I'll never forget, and I was at Kim Walford's house, and I put all the kilo plates on backwards. I was still newish. She told me very nicely that I put on backwards. Obviously, I'm in her house, but I was like, wow, been doing that on every video on Instagram for months, you know? Like, it's just awkward.
So the first time I learned about plate loading, I was actually volunteering at a deadlift only meet, like a fundraiser deadlift only meet. And I went to put the like inside plate on or something. And the woman who was loading on the other side like snapped at me and she was like, that's not how you do it. Now, and it's funny that this was the first time I learned how to do it. And this is like, because I didn't really have access to a powerlifting gym. Again, there aren't that many gyms within the city of Philadelphia. Especially within the city metro area, there's like one that's up in the Northeast, but that's like 45 minutes on I-95 if you live downtown. And if you live downtown, also, you maybe don't have a car like I do, but I'm not going to go 45 minutes on 95 to get to a gym I'm not sure I want to be at anyway. And one of the other lifting gyms up until recently was like, if you lifted there, you had to get coached through there. Just because you're a gym owner who's also a coach does not mean that you are the right coach for a person or going to be the one who's going to be the most helpful to them. So saying that I control your access to equipment by saying you also have to pay me to coach you, you know what? Open a small personal training studio if that's what you want to do. Don't have a gym. And maybe that's just me being like that. Maybe that's just my opinion, but I've seen so many people get inadequate coaching that they're paying a ton of money for that way. And I don't like it. I think it's so like, not only was I never going to get coached by this person, had no desire to be coached by this person, like, you know, whatever. But so I was still lifting at the CrossFit gym because I got into lifting through CrossFit. I went into my first powerlifting meet. It was a fundraiser meet. I didn't know powerlifting was a sport. I just thought somebody was doing this fundraiser for Planned Parenthood, and I hated Donald Trump and I liked Planned Parenthood. So I was like, sure, I'll do this. And then somebody was like, hey, you know, this is actually a sport and you're kind of good at it. So I like, we're talking like I had only ever lifted with bumper plates. I had never used an Ohio power bar. I had never lifted out of a combo rack. The first time that I realized that I was putting the plates on the bar wrong was after my second nationals.
Wow.
Yeah. After my second nationals, I had no idea that the inside plate went on facing with the lettering facing in towards the bar, and the rest of them went the other way out. No clue, zero idea.
But it's not common sense. Someone has to tell you, unless you
Somebody
read the
has
whole
to tell
rule
you.
book. But no one goes into the sport reading the whole rule book.
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't know that you couldn't adjust your wrist straps on the platform until I almost failed to lift for it at the Arnold. Yeah. So it's like, and so it's like learn something new every day. But it is difficult to remember what it is to walk into a gym and be a total newbie and just be staring at all of this stuff and being like, I don't know how to use this, or like even how to change the safeties on the rack and um, any of it. There's just so much like, what does this weird ass piece of equipment do? Um, yeah. Why would I ever use that?
Word. But that's how you got into powerlifting. You were at deadlift only meets and someone, well, fundraiser.
No, I was at, so no.
Okay.
I got into powerlifting. There was this meet called Lift for Planned Parenthood that an organization called Women's Strength Coalition. It was their flagship meet. And a woman who I had met through Reddit, who was in the Philadelphia area, who was also a veterinary student, who helped me out and like helped me when I accidentally shut my cat's tail in an iron door. She was like she was a resident at, like, she was going through her residency at the school for the emergency room I took the cat to. So she was like really sweet. Luna wasn't even her patient, but she was like sending me updates about like Luna's condition. And Samra, she was super sweet. Anyway, she told me about this meet up in New York, and she was like, yeah, it's, just the squat, bench, and deadlift. And she might have thrown around the word powerlifting a couple of times. And I guess I knew they were called the power lifts, but I didn't actually know that like it was a sport in and of itself. So I was just doing CrossFit. So I trained into it by doing like random sets of like, I'd do like 3 to 5 sets of whatever along with my CrossFit training every day. And so that's like how I trained into that. And then had I not met my friend Winnie while I was there, who is still a really, really good friend of mine. She actually handled me at my meet in March because I was up near her house. I would have failed every lift. I was not squatting a single squat to depth when I got there, and she had to tell me where depth was. I blew half the rack commands, like just completely blew half the rack commands. I think I stared. Yeah, I think I did this for my first like 2 to 3 meets where I like stared at the bar on deadlift, like not realizing that somebody didn't have to tell me I was allowed to pick it up.
So, but you don't know. It's because you get told when to start the squat, you get told when to start the bench, and then like they're just quiet.
Yeah. So I'm just standing there. It's like, you're allowed to pick that up. Oh, okay. But so I got done with that meet and I wound up winning it. And it was my first time I ever deadlifted 300 pounds, and I wound up winning it. And I was like super happy and super excited. And the head judge, I think it was the head judge who said it. I know who the head judge was because she became my first coach, was like, yeah, this is actually a thing and you're actually pretty good at it. So we did my first USAPL meet a couple of months after that. And I signed up as a 52 kilo lifter and then saw that nobody else was signed up as a 52. So I purposely weighed in over 52. So I weighed in at 52.5 because, again, I don't know what I'm doing. I just didn't want to compete against myself. And I qualified for nationals at that year as a 52 and a 57. And it was like, okay, well, now we have to do another meet to actually compete at nationals as a 52.
Yeah.
So did that, did 2018 nationals as my third USAPL meet, did the Arnold as my fourth USAPL meet. And then like, it's just kind of been going from there.
Wow. So it's like, well, that's pretty cool because you start out and you do well. You don't know what you did, but you did well enough that the third meets nationals. Like,
yeah. No, it's
and at nationals, you discover. Oh no, second nationals, you discover how to put the plates on.
Yeah, after the second nationals, I discovered how to put the plates on. And after the Arnold, I bought myself an Ohio Power Bar and bought it back home in the minivan that we rented to go to the Arnold. So after 2018, or I'm sorry, after 2019 Arnold, I also had a powerlifting barbell. Yay!
There we go. Making
Yeah,
big moves.
big moves. Yeah. So it's been weird. So yeah, I'll be 38 on Sunday, and I guess that means that I didn't know powerlifting was a sport until I was, I don't know, 34,
Dude,
33,
that's so cool.
34. I can't do math. Don't ask me to do math.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I can just do barbell math.
Oh, yeah, I can sometimes do that.
Only
I
pounds too. I can't do
well,
kilos.
because because I still switch back and forth between pounds and kilos depending on where I'm lifting. I have this thing that I do where the 5 kilo plates and the 5 pound plates are a similar size, and I keep convincing myself they're the same weight when they are clearly not the same weight. Yeah, so I
Love
do
it.
that more often than I should.
So this is a pretty good segue into, I want to talk about going into 2021 nationals. There's no 2020 nationals, so
No
we can't talk
2020
about
nationals.
that.
Yeah.
And I do know that coming into 2021 nationals, I'm just curious to know what made us go to 47 if you're 52.
What made me decide to? Okay,
To go to
so
47.
yeah, so COVID happened, and at the point where we all got locked down for COVID, I had actually been trying to bulk a little bit because I had always weighed in, unless I was actually trying to be heavier, had always weighed in a little bit light. And I was like, okay, so ideally I should at the very least try to bulk up and put on some extra muscle mass so that I'm cutting a little bit into meats, nothing crazy. But I'm not walking in weighing like 50 kilos. And then COVID happened, and my response to it was actually, and also just having the social aspects of my job cut off, I lost weight without intending to lose weight. So I go into my meet that I did in December, which we did because we knew we needed to put up a total in 2020, because the way they were doing the rules in 2020, it seemed like I needed to get a top 10 hometown showdown total. I can't talk to get into nationals in 2021. So we're like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get me on the board. And when I tell you I ate like a full dinner the night before, like didn't cut at all, didn't worry about any of that, woke up, went to the gym, weighed in as many clothes as they would let me weigh in it wearing because it was cold. It was the middle of December, and weighed in at 50.1 kilos. And my total from 2019 nationals was 355 kilos. And I set a 387.5 kilo total. I set a 387.5 kilo total. Didn't squat what I was like max capable of squatting, but squats have always kind of gotten into my head, and my depth is inconsistent on them. And we've never actually been able, it's like, really, and I would love to say it's becoming less of a complex, but we'll get to that in a second, where it is clearly not becoming less of a complex for me. I'm clearly not becoming more comfortable with squats. Fuck you, squats. But had an okay bench day, not the best bench day in the world, not the worst, but pulled a 175 kilo deadlift, set a bench PR, set a squat PR, wound up with this total. And it was like, well, that's cool. And I didn't have to cut for it. So 387.5 is reasonably competitive for a 52 kilo athlete. It is very competitive for a 47 kilo athlete. I had joked about it with Claire earlier in the year, and we were like, nah, whatever. But once I had done that, it was like, okay, it's pretty clear we should give this a try. So the plan was, okay, cool. We have all of this time to give this a try. It is now December of 2020. Nationals is not until October of 2021. That is 10 to 11 months. Great. This is fine. It's also right coming up on the holidays, which were like kind of the lousiest holidays in the world, obviously, because I'm still like, I can't see my friends and family. But it's like I can still order pizza and make myself giant steaks. So like we're coming up on the holidays, and it's like, all right, cool. We're going to take the next month to chill out, not worry about any of this stuff, ease back into training. We'll find a meet sometime in like May through June, just an easy meet, get you qualified. It's going to be so easy to qualify you as a 47. It doesn't even matter. And then we'll roll into Nationals 2021, and we'll have done this on a very, very reasonable, very, very chill timeline. Yeah. Well, So January hits. USAPL at some point during January decides that they're going to move up the schedule. So Nationals is in June. They also tell me that because I am not in the top 3 of Hometown Showdown, I am not guaranteed a spot at Nationals now, despite having over like a 100 and whatever good wilks or good lifts or whatever freaking point system they're using now. Yeah. And so, you know, that's all frantic. So we choose a meet that is the best of the options I have, which is to go up to Albany, New York, because my friend Winnie can help me out if I'm up in Albany, New York. Go up to Albany, New York in mid to late March, do this meet. The plan is to do it as a train through and like just kind of try to set RPE 8 as like the goal for the day. And she capped my deadlift. I wasn't allowed to deadlift over a certain amount. So it didn't matter what deadlift it was that I hit that amount or how good it felt. It was like, no, you hit this and you are done. And, you know, just kind of get me ready, see how it goes, just test out how am I doing as a 47? Well, I somehow managed to get myself down to 47, actually pretty reasonably, especially considering that I had to do it in like a month and a half as opposed to the 4 to 5 months I was planning, right coming off the holidays. Actually pretty reasonably managed to get myself down to 47, or I should say got myself to like 47.75 and water cut the rest of the way. Squats went well. I missed my last squat on death. 2-to-1 call, go figure. Bench press, my first bench was super, super easy. Did that at 77.5. My second bench I did at 82.5. It hit my chest. It didn't come off my chest exactly how I wanted it to. There was no downward motion. There was no anything. The head ref calls a rack command and has them take it from me. So they give me 3 minutes to redo my second bench. So I redo my second bench and it just flies. So I do 82.5 again and it just flies. And at this point, the American record was set at 85. And it was like, well, why wouldn't I do 85.5? So at that point I set the American record, which has now been taken. Demetria did an awesome job of that at Nationals, and we'll see. I hope I can make that a competition going forward. But either way, like, I just think it's really cool that like you've got 47 kilo women who are basically benching 200 pounds. I think that's awesome.
Your bench is huge.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited that there are multiples of us that are now doing this. It's amazing. But so did that, and deadlifts were super easy. I think like I forget what Claire let me go up to. I think she let me go up to
175.
I don't think no 175 was December. I think she only let me go up to 165 in March.
165. There it is. Yeah. My bad.
And 165 was just kind of like, whatever, we're pulling air. And that was my second deadlift, and she didn't let me take my third. Which is fair. It was supposed to be a train through RPE 8 meet. My argument would have been that lift was really an RPE 6, and she could have let me go. No, I'm kidding. We don't have to argue that. So everything's looking great. So it's like, awesome. We did this. We're successful. We're going to roll into 2021 Nationals, and everything's going to look awesome. And everything did look really, really awesome. Despite the amount of stuff that was like piling up, everything looked awesome. I was already basically at weight, and I had plenty of time. There was some rhetoric from certain podcasts that I won't say which one, where they're like, oh, she's too tall. There was some insinuation that I was too old. And there was some insinuation that my talking about the fact that cutting weight was a thing meant that I was really struggling to cut weight. First of all, I am not too tall. I just have long legs. These people had never met me. Second of all, like, if there was one thing that was going reasonably well, it was the fact that I was basically already sitting in a good spot. Like, so going into Nationals, my calories were probably higher than most people's calories were, and my cut was probably easier than most people's cuts were. That was like the one thing I had going for me as I tried to open a new gym, start a new job, you know, and by the way, opening a new gym also means all of the build out for the gym. And if you've ever built a gym, that is a fair amount of physical labor. Um, you know, all of this other stuff. I go into my first week of my new job, which is also the first day of my new job was also the first day of my peaking block. April 26th was also the first day of my peaking block. Running around like crazy. The first day goes freaking amazing. I am, Claire looks at my training at the end of it, my coach, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And I made a joke to her. She's like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I'm like, oh, you mean like not sleep, be so overloaded with stress that I don't know where my brain is at every second of every day, like whatever. It's like, yeah, sure, I'll keep doing that. So I am feeling amazing, amazing, amazing. Day 3, I go down into a pause squat, which I was like, hell yeah, I can't believe I'm doing pause squats this heavy. They feel great. And I go down for one and something just goes pop. Like I hear it, I feel it. There's an immense amount of pain. I am on the floor and I am like, I'm not getting up. I honestly didn't think was going to get up. I was very, very shocked. I got up, hurt like hell. Pretty much at that point was like, we're done. We're not going to nationals. Claire backed me off she's like, you know, you still have time, even if we can't squat 100% of what we still have time. Let's see how the rehab goes. Let's see how we can get this going. And we got it going. Right? We're at the end of April, beginning of May.
Okay.
And surprisingly managed to get myself back to feeling pretty good. And then a week out from nationals, I'm doing like one of my last days of heavy training. I do like my RPE 7 single, which winds up being, I think, like 120, 122.5 kilos. And it moves like, I'm like, oh, great. I'm almost back. If this is RPE 7, I might not get the 135 to 140 I wanted to, but I think I can at least get 132 and a half. But I'm like, all right, we're going to be conservative. We're going to like, you know, whatever. I go down for 125 kilos and it just goes out and I am on the floor again. This is 10 days out, not even. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And so like, you know, at that point it becomes like, are you going to just go and I had just gotten like SBD stuff and it's like, you know, it's like, and I was feeling so good and so confident and it was, you know, my bench had been flying, everything has been flying. And, you know, it's like, because everybody was dealing with some of the same stuff, like that carpet being super, super slippery, but it's not having a quad and trying to press into that carpet was extremely fun. But like, you know, so we're getting to this whole thing. And it's like, it's like, what do you do? Do you go? Do I still go? Yeah. So I went, I showed up. It was bad. It's okay. We got through it.
I honestly commend you for going because it's like, as an athlete, I know how much work went into it. It's months and months of training. You were stressed out. Like, had you been able to not work out, you would have gotten sleep, right? But she's like, no, I got to prioritize my training. You're running around trying to handle both jobs. Like the amount of time in the training, the amount of time making sure you stay light. You have to make sure you stay light. That takes energy.
You have to make sure, yeah.
Like all that, and then like you get to the last freaking weekend, it's like, do I just toss it out the window and just stay home? Like you don't get the money back for the plane ticket probably. You booked your flight, you booked your hotel. You don't get money back for nationals itself. So it's like, do I just give all of that up or do I show up and do what I can? And you showed up.
I showed up and it was like, so the first thing was kind of like, well, yeah, like you said, everything's paid for. So now I have the choice of like, do I go and do I just hang out with my friends and see my friends who I haven't seen in forever and like get to like see new people and cheer everybody else on? Like I want to be there for that alone. So it's like, and plus I've paid for everything. What am I going to do? Have paid for everything and not use this hotel room, not use these venue passes, not use any of this stuff? It's like, so obviously I'm going to go. And it's like, but I can't possibly compete like this. And like, I'm going back and forth with it. And like, I'm like actually crying in a CVS as I'm like going back and forth about it and being like, I can't go, I can't show up like this. And Claire's like, where are you now? And, I'm texting back and forth with people and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm picking up like Pedialyte powder and stuff. And it's like, I thought you weren't gonna compete. And it's like, so, in my brain, I can't even decide what the heck I'm doing. And I just, after talking to people, was like, you only have shitty decisions. And the one that felt the least shitty was like, show up and see what you can do. But we're talking about like, so we're a week out and it was like, now we have to plan to see like what we can and can't do. On the rubber floor, bench was still sort of okay because I didn't have to press in super hard. I didn't have to, it wasn't as strong as it had been, wasn't bad. Deadlift was hurt like hell pulling it off the ground, but once I got it off the ground, if I could convince myself to keep pulling, that was okay. Squat, like Claire had to convince me that I could even put a barbell on my back and try to go down with it. I was like, there's no fucking way in hell. It happened. The re-injury happened on a Monday. Tuesday, I was like, there's no fucking way. Wednesday, I think I put 40 kilos on the bar and did a couple of reps before I was like, I can't do anymore. Built back from there. And actually Saturday had done a couple of reps at like 75 or 80 that felt decent. And I was like, all right, maybe we are going to manage to get this like not great. But I knew that if I could even get it up to like 100, 110 kilos, that might still be okay. If I could do the rest of my lifts, that might still be okay. And Monday, and I'm like getting on a plane first thing Tuesday morning. And Monday, I go to squat 75 kilos and I collapse under the bar and cannot do it. And I'm on the floor. And then again, like, I don't know if I'm getting up. So like, I actually went into the warm-up room at Nationals and like Leah Lutz was handling me because, of course, nothing works out as planned. Claire had to compete at the same time I did. So Leah Lutz was like, and Leah Lutz is awesome. So that's fine. I mean, it's more than fine. I love Leah Lutz. She's great. But so she's handling me and we're getting ready to like warm me up for spots. And I'm like, I don't know if I can lift the barbell right now. Like, I just really don't know. So the fact that I even managed 80 kilos was shocking to me. Yeah.
I saw the pain too. I saw the pain face.
I haven't been able to look at it yet. I have actually not been able to look at it yet. Yeah.
Maybe just don't. Like, is it really that bad if you don't?
I might not look at it. I might not look at it. I've looked at deadlifts. I've looked at bench. I have not been able to make myself look at the videos for squats because like I kind of felt like I was going to puke on my shoes. Like I was in a lot of pain. Yeah. It is what it is.
You honestly, I'm surprised you didn't token it, and I'm happy you didn't. You put up weight. I'm surprised you didn't token it because I've been like, yo, I came here to bench and deadlift at this point. Like,
yeah. So there were two things. The first one was like, if I was going to try to defend my bench AR, was taking a token squat going to hurt that? And the second thing was like, my bench and my deadlift are potentially strong enough that even if I took only what I could take, there was a chance. I think I still finished 5th and I almost pulled myself into 3rd place. I almost pulled myself into 3rd place with a Hail Mary, but 177.5 kilos came to my knees, which is, considering how I was feeling, saying a lot. I'm actually kind of excited about it because I feel like it means that I'm going to be able to deadlift 400 pounds soon. I think crazy. 180, 182 and a half is probably there once I get healed up. But like, and it was cool. I got to see some great lifting. I got to hang out with friends. I got to do all of that stuff. But like, I'm also excited. Rehab work sucks. I'm having a lot of trouble with it. Because like, I know how much I want to push. I know how much work I want to be doing. And the work I want to be doing versus the work I am doing, it's like they are very far apart. But I'm figuring it out as I go along. And unfortunately, anybody who's friends with me or coaches me or whatever has probably had to hear a hell of a lot more whining from me than they want to. Yeah, I'll put on, I'll keep the positive attitude for the most part, but every once in a while, if you're one of the people who talks to me a lot, you are going to get very, very not positive attitude, Leah. I did kind of manage to squat to parallel earlier this week, so that was cool.
With less pain?
With less pain. Yeah. So I can do things like step up on a chair now. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
It's hard because like when you're an athlete, like you know what you can do, and to know what you were doing and then be like, hey, today we're gonna try squats, just get to parallel period with my body. It's not enjoyable.
It is not enjoyable. None of this is enjoyable. I fucking hate belt squats. I hate hamstring. Is it? No, it's the curls, the
extension.
Yes, extension? The leg extensions. Like I'm using machines for the first time in forever. Like it's getting there. It's getting there. I mean, I'm sure I'll be like, I don't even want to say like I'll come back stronger, but like I'll get back to where I was and then I'll start working forward. But it's like we've all been there. It's annoying. I just really hope that I can rehab on time for March. And then I really hope that there are things that I'm invited to in March that, I get to actually show what I know I'm capable of.
Who's helping you rehab? Obviously Claire's your coach, but like who's working with you online, I guess, because you're traveling? Is someone like PT?
Well, we've been doing, Claire's been handling it for now, although we might bring in, the barbell medicine rehab team at some point. And I just like, and and that has been my call, and she has the right to tell me that. It's like, no, you have to work with a rehab specialist if it doesn't work out. And it's simply been for me because like I'm comfortable with Claire and she does have enough background and enough resources, and I'm comfortable with Claire, and I have so much that's changed and going on in my life. Having to switch over to a different person for my training for 4 months is just like, to me, that was like, am I gaining more than I'm losing? And I don't know. So we'll see. I mean, so we'll see. There might have to be more. There was, PT consult with the first injury. So, yeah. So the conclusion seems to be that I have like a grade 1 tear, grade 1 to grade 2 tear in my quad muscle. It's not like it's anything like catastrophic. It's just, yeah, it's just painful. It's gotten better though. And I guess the hope now is that we can get me to a point where it doesn't, like, where I don't re-injure it. And I think that that's very likely. I think that what happened was I was just under a ton of stress in a very, very short time frame with not a lot of sleep and a lot of life stuff going on. And we're talking just because I was getting acclimated at the new job and trying to do the training, that I was leaving my house every morning. Probably I was waking up every morning at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, leaving my house with everything I needed for the day by like 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, and not getting home till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. And getting home and then having to make myself dinner and go to bed and get a couple hours of sleep and wake up again. I was doing that like 5 to 6 nights a week, which obviously clearly is not sustainable, but it was also just with all of the schedule changes and with having to start the new job, and with that meaning that the gym was opening on top of starting the new job and everything else that was going on. It was like, well, I have to work. I've committed to, it's like I had all of these things and I was just trying to manage it the best that I could. And unfortunately, is what it is. So,
what's crazy? Like, because all of that going on essentially is like not to sound negative, but it's like something's gotta give, right? Like something's gotta give. This cannot keep going. And it reminds me of a time in my life where when I was like not sleeping, working two jobs, like I straight up was like falling asleep behind the wheel, driving and waking up like, oh, I just went across three lanes, people are honking at me, and I'm about to drive off the road. Like drinking
Yeah.
so much caffeine that I actually had weird symptoms in my body from the amount of caffeine. Didn't even know you could do that. Like I was like, it was crazy. And it's like something's gotta give. That's when I had my back injury, when all that was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, like it's, and it's probably pretty clear that I'm the type of person who rolls my eyes at the type of people who are like, oh, you're going to hurt your back with your form like this and your form like that. It's like, no, I'm going to hurt my back because I haven't slept. I have like so much stress piled on, and like, yeah, all of this other stuff. It probably has almost nothing to do, if it has anything to do, with my form, and everything to do with everything that's like built up in my life around that. And like I said, I was like joking about it, but I was also terrified of it, which also probably adds to the stress and doesn't help. But like, what are you going to do? Because I think we all get to that point where you're coming up on a big meet and you've done all the hard work. And especially if you're feeling like, and there were added pressures for me. Like I went from being a reasonably good, but might finish top 552, to being having an American bench record for the short amount of time that I had it, and being the person who had gotten the closest to like the total that nobody could touch from Heather Connor. And this is not to say that I was like in any way, shape, or form being like, oh, I'm going to, obviously Heather Connor is Heather Connor and she's an amazing athlete. But second place was sort of mine to kind of, lose. And I knew that I could make more of a statement there than people thought I could make, because there were a lot of things going into the meet they didn't realize. Like I didn't max out at my first meet as a 47. So that 377.5 kilo total was me taking RPE 8 lifts without peaking, after like having to cut much faster. So the total I was putting up in the gym sometimes had a 4 in front of it. And so it was like, but it's like all this pressure, and it's like, suddenly, and King of Lifts, that those two have been super nice to me and super awesome. So I can't say anything like, and it's all positive, but it's like, I'm somebody who has like 600 Instagram followers and nobody knows who the fuck I am. I'm just some old woman who likes cats and occasionally likes to lift weights and mouths off and whatever. And suddenly I'm getting posted on King of Lifts. People are mentioning my name on podcasts. Some people are sending me shit on the internet like, hey, Leah, did you see your name on this list? And I'm like sitting here and I'm like, oh, and I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it's just like, yeah, something's got to give. And then you have the added stress of like, there's always the pressure of going into a meet. Like, I'm tired, I'm stressed, I'm whatever. Like, am I going to manage to pull this off? Like, what if this is the time I get injured? What is this? And you try not to get in that loop, but it's really hard not to get in that loop. And I think honestly, coming out of this next year, one of the harder things is going to wind up being like not being in that loop. And thank goodness for sports psychologists, because I will be heavily utilizing that.
Oh my gosh, like this just reminds me of like, because I've been listening to like a lot of the shows for now after King of Nationals, where a lot of lifters who King of Lifts is talking to are like, yeah, I got off social media. Like I saw you posted like I stand with me or whatever, and like King of Lifts, like I stand with Leah, I stand with Solana, and
Yeah.
people were like, I got off social media after that. Like I couldn't look at it, I couldn't look at people, I didn't want to see what they had to say, I didn't want to listen to the podcast, listen to them later, and it's a lot. It's like, yeah, okay, powerlifting is not like the freaking NFL where you're on TV, but like this sport is finally getting some steam, and like even a year ago, no one was really blasting us on podcasts. Now we are, and people are like hitting you up in the DMs like, yo, I know who you are. And you're like, excuse me, why do you know who I am? And they're like, because you're getting all this hype.
So strange thing. And I expect this to happen again in Never. Somebody recognized me at the airport.
Like not someone who powerlifts?
So I mean, somebody who I guess was like a beginner, or like I don't want to say beginner, but like a woman who powerlifts, and I think probably just started powerlifting. Unfortunately, I was like running between terminals, but she was like, "Your Leah lifts a lot," and I was like, I mean, I'm still like a very unknown person. I now have 1,100 followers as it's or something like that, as opposed to 600. So like my following has doubled and is still tiny. But it's like, yeah, it's like all of a sudden it's like, wait, when did this become a thing? And it's just like it's cool and I love it and I hope it continues. It was just like I think I let and it's not one thing. It's not, there was obviously a lot going on and injuries happen regardless, but I don't think that I think that I have to learn how to handle the pressure in the lead up a lot better than I was. um because the other thing is like, are you really being honest with yourself regarding your fatigue levels? If you're sitting there being like, no, the expectation is there, I have to push harder, I have to push harder. Yeah. So
I am fascinated by sports psychologists too. I'm like kind of looking forward to like how it helps you when we talk again whenever you do your next meet.
well, thank you. Thank you. It's been, yeah, I mean, and thank you for inviting me to talk to you. I know, like, yeah, you've had a lot of really impressive lifters on here. You've had some really impressive lifts, and uh, I did not have an impressive nationals. So,
But you're an impressive human being. Once I just got a little bit of information about your gym, and that's kind of what made me want to be like, oh, like she is interesting. Obviously, we also got to talk a little bit in Daytona, which was cool. And so
yeah.
after that conversation with you, I was like already interested in talking to you on the podcast. But
Oh, nice.
I want us to like
Thank
chill because you just had your performance and you were like coming
God,
down.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was an interesting. That was an interesting few days, like going back to the new office where I had just met these people. How did nationals go? And it's like very badly. Uh yeah, that it was a bunch of like people calling me up asking me how I was doing. I'm like, I might prefer not to talk about it as much anymore. um yeah. So, but it's nice to actually take the foot off the gas. It's nice and hard at the same time to take the foot off the gas, but I think it's good, and hopefully get myself like focused and moving back. I mean, I like I said, it's a setback and it's disappointing, and it feels like 6 months of working as hard as I could for that to be the end of it was kind of not my favorite thing in the world. But yeah, it doesn't mean the work doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that it won't still be there next year. And yeah. So, and I will definitely let you know more about how the sports psychology helped me. Definitely helped me going into nationals, because one of the big things was we knew when I decided to compete that it was going to be different levels of bad. Maybe I get lucky and I can put 100 kilos on the bar, but maybe I go to start warming up squats and I can't even squat the barbell, and we actually don't know what it's going to be. So it was like going down a list of like, what things are you good at? Like I'm or at least I think I'm funny. Every once in a while other people seem to think so too, but who knows. I'm good at that. I'm good at being honest. I like genuinely love cheering other people on. I love being with the competitors. I love learning about the other competitors. Like, I am happy to be competing with every woman I'm competing with. So it was like I'm I'm good at like being that person. Like I like being able to be that person. So it was like, all right, I'm going to show up. I'm going to support the hell out of my friends. I'm going to cheer. I'm going to be honest with myself about what I can do. And like, these are like, if this is off the table, this is the next like win I try to take for myself. If that wins off the table, this is the next win. And a lot of them just wound up not being performance based. Like it's, you know, we can't do this. What are we doing that's not a performance based goal? Because setting performance based goals, that was a bad idea. That would be a bad idea. In
Well,
that situation, it was going to be a terrible idea.
what you're saying is really, like, I hope anyone who listens to this, like, really takes that to heart. Like, okay, let's identify the reasons that I could still enjoy my time here and, like, what I'm going to get out of it as positive besides just the actual performance.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, if you, like you said, if you were just like, let's just go and just see what I can do, and I pray at least 100 kilos. If it's not 100 kilos, I'm just gonna jump off a cliff and kill myself. And it's just like, wait a minute, like, don't do that, because now we're even more stressed out on top of the situation. Like, step back, see what you can enjoy besides just the 9 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it worked out okay, and you know, there were some positives from it, but it's been great talking to you, and thank you for inviting me on. And also, I do appreciate that when we were talking about this beforehand, and you can cut this or include this. Obviously, it's your podcast; you can do whatever you want to. But that you asked if I was okay talking about it before just like assuming that like I was gonna want to talk about it. That was very big of you, and I appreciate it. But like, yeah, I think it's been helpful once I'm like out of it and like I'm not dwelling on it. I'm like, you know, there's no, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah, that is actually good to be like, yeah, I showed up, I did the thing, it happened, we move on.
You have a big heart, Leah. I love talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode with Leah. Like I mentioned before, make sure you subscribe and share with a friend if you enjoyed it, and comment below. Catch you next time. Have a great day.